I'm going to make the, which one are they? Which are they? The motion is to remove Amendment 643 from both bills. Is everyone okay with that? Excellent. Okay. Now then, we'll vote both bills.
Still favorable with it? Well, no, I think now you have to adopt.
All right, so now the motion's favorable with amendments. Do you want to record the vote as you recorded it before? Everyone's okay with that? Great. Okay. Now we have House Bill 100 before us. There's an amendment to add. Oh, sorry. You okay?
I don't have enough space.
Oh, okay. There's an amendment to add Amendment 643 onto House Bill 100.
Senate Bill 643.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's to Senate Bill 643. Senate Bill 643 onto House Bill 100. Is everyone okay with that?
Wait, are you striking?
All right, now we'll go on to Senator Lee, and that's counsel. Can you please read the bill, and we'll start there.
So this is Senate Bill 57, but if you'd like to see what the proposal is, look up House Bill 748, the third reader version. So the bill as proposed to be amended, it would take out references to child in need of assistance. So all those references would be struck throughout the bill, saying that this section does not apply to SINA. That would all be removed. The next portion of the bill, it alters statutory provisions that require a court to deny child custody or visitation rights to a party in specific certain circumstances involving abuse or neglect of a child. So this is on page 2 of the bill. It's more of a rewording or clarification of the law. And then additionally, the bill establishes that reasonable efforts to protect a child or a party may not be considered an unjustifiable denial or interference with visitation granted by custody or visitation order. And then lastly, the proposed amendment would delete the best interest factors.
It just mostly deals with two provisions, and that just the first part of the amendment. Just the difference is it just requires that the court specify the reasons for its finding in custody and visitation. That's all it does. It's very consistent. It's actually the same language that Delegate DeBay uses in her HB 505, where the court has to articulate the reasons for its finding. And then the second part that is changed is that this just merely is a situation where the protective parent doesn't return the child back to the abuser parent, and so then the abuser parent goes and files for contempt or whatever, and then but the judge still has the discretion to determine if the protective parent was taking a reasonable effort to protect the child, and so it would not be considered an unjustifiable denial or interference in custody or visitation. That's all it does. It's a very clean bill. And I'd like to adopt the House amendments to SB 57.
I don't want to be a bottleneck or hold things up because it sounds like something's been agreed to. But so what Senator Lee just said, the bill does two things. So just full disclosure, I didn't like the bill at all in its original form, and I was not going to vote for the bill in its original form. I'm concerned that if that's all the bill does, is it possible that we get a clean copy of this bill before we vote for it?
So it's basically going to be what the House bill is now. 748.
Okay.
748. Yeah, just go to the third reader copy.
So I know that we had an issue in my district that some people are familiar with, but that it was a pretty interesting issue. You had a mother and father that had gotten divorced. The reason they had gotten divorced was the father had sexually molested one of the children. And so anyway, the judge, after he got done with his time, the judge adopted the custody, and the magistrate ruled because both parents, he wanted them to have both parents. Well, then the father, even though there was problems with that relationship, the dad was sleeping with the children. Now all of a sudden he's since been arrested for it, but this way, and the mother knew, and she went to a lot of people about it. The provisions in this law that Senator Lee has worked out would help those parents who know that the other one is up to no good, doing something that is completely immoral and wrong, that they could work to that, and to have a reason to say and have, before a crime is committed, to be able to go to a judge and work it out. And I think that's a good provision that they've worked out.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm reading language that requires a court to specifically find, that there is no likelihood of further child abuse or neglect. And I find that to be an impossible standard to ask the court to reach. You can look at history, and you can look at current circumstances, and you can look at efforts for rehabilitation and reunification and all of those kinds of things, and make a determination that it's not likely, or there's a substantial likelihood that it won't occur. But to say no, that seems like
Clarify that under the current law, that's what it is right now, unless the court specifically finds there's no likelihood of further child abuse or neglect by the party. So the only change here is probably that the court has to specify reasons for its finding. That's all. It doesn't change really. It really doesn't change the current law. It just adds that the court has to specify reasons for its findings. That's all. So we're not changing really any substantive part of the law. We're just asking the court to just tell us why. That's all.
Yeah, she's right. Oh, so Senator Lee is correct. The language she was referencing current law. So if you look at, I assume you're on the House bill, so page 2, line 15 and 16. current law states unless the court specifically finds that there's no likelihood of further child abuse or neglect of the party. So that language has been deleted, but then put back into the bill in lines 23 through 24. Specifically finds that there is no likelihood of further child abuse or neglect of the party. So it's not creating a new standard there. It's reorganizing the section. The new language is states with specificity the reasons for the finding that there's no likelihood of further child abuse or neglect of the party. However, if there is a finding, or if the court's unable to meet that standard, then you go to line 27, subsection B, which is when a court may approve a supervised visitation arrangement.
So we can work off of that. Is everyone okay with that? Okay, great. Okay, Senator Cassidy.
I recall a dialogue when this was up for hearing with a witness asking whether this applied to a SINA case. And I'm looking at the language that it was stricken that says this section does not apply to a SINA case. So does this language now apply to a SINA case or not?
No, this is a child custody proceeding. The state is not involved. The reason that was asked to be added into the bill as introduced, but then the discussions were that including that language in this bill would create more confusion than solve it. So it was decided to leave it alone and not touch
It doesn't
SINA.
apply to a SINA case. I just remember the assurances were given that it doesn't apply, and I just want to make sure that's where we still stand when I see that language
Yeah,
stricken.
it's trying not to
Thank
touch
you.
that or change it.
Thank you.
Any further comment? All right, go ahead, Senator.
I don't
Martin.
want to belabor it, but, so help me out, because it is confusing at the last minute. So it looks like the language is being taken out that would allow approval for a supervised visitation. Is that correct?
It's put back in subsection B. So if you go down to line 27, that's when the supervised visitation may be provided.
Okay. That, and what was that? Sorry, Senator Lee, when you spoke, you mentioned that best interest language was taken out. Specifically, what was that and where in this bill?
Counsel, do you know where that is? I know it's in here somewhere, but they struck it out. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to hold things up. Can you just tell me what the language was that is taken out?
Sorry, my apologies. What was your question?
Senator Lee mentioned that best interest language was taken out. I just was.
Oh, yes. If you scroll down to page 4 of the House bill, all that language is struck. And just keep scrolling all the way until page 7. That's understandable, yeah.
I just wanted to add in, I believe all this language that was stricken on custody and visitation on normal, outside of child abuse, we passed right recently in this session a bill on that whole issue of child custody and visitation. That was a major, I think it was Delegate DeMay's bill or some that was with the family law section and all. So that kind of took care of all this area that's now deleted. And now we're just dealing with child abuse as an exception. So this would sort of be, it should have come out of here because that would be interfering with that bill. So we're just, okay. Yeah, thank you.
Vice Chair Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a good bill, but I just have a question for council. I also don't want to slow it up, but I'm not familiar with this reasonable grounds to believe standard. Like, I know what preponderance means. I know what clear and convincing means. I know what beyond a reasonable doubt means. I don't know what reasonable grounds to believe means and where that falls in the kind of hierarchy of standards. Because if preponderance is 50% plus one, then what is reasonable grounds to believe?
Any of those 501 crimes. So you couldn't participate unless it's for those crimes. Oh. That's it. That's the card. Oh.
Sure.
All right, let's get back here. All right, keep going.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just say what the question was. So Senator Waldstreicher had the question.
All right, guys. Senator Carter. Let's rock and roll.
So looking at the third reader of the House, House Bill 748, on page 2, line 21, the bill uses the term reasonable grounds. Senator Waldstreicher had the question about what reasonable grounds meant and whether or where else it was used in the code. So specifically looking at peace orders and protective orders, these orders use both a reasonable grounds standard and a preponderance of the evidence standard. So for the interim and temporary orders, the reasonable grounds standard is used. For the final peace order and a final protective order, the finding is the judge must find by a preponderance of the evidence, more likely than not. So that is an explanation of the difference between the two terms and where they are used elsewhere in family law.
Okay, I think Senator Lee has asked that I propose the amendment just to switch to preponderance for clarity, and I think Senator Lee will speak or second the motion and speak on. Can you do that on mic?
Yes, I think Senator Waldstreicher's amendment is reasonable, I think. To tighten it up, I'd like to do it to tighten up the bill, so there's no loose ends here. So there's total clarity, too.
So I appreciate both the spirit with which the sponsor brings the bill and the proposed amendment. I do have a concern, and I just feel like I have to put it out there. So the concern I have is, first of all, this is not other family law dealing with peace orders and protective orders. This is dealing with a person losing their right to have custody and visitation of their child. Okay? So the standard should not be necessarily the same as in a peace or protective order dealing with two adults. The concern that I have is we're having a court make a determination first under the bill under reasonable grounds and now possibly under a preponderance of the evidence, but with no prerequisite that there was ever a determination that these acts that would be crimes have occurred. I just think it's a wrong, it's really, as much as I would like to support it, I don't think that I can. I think this is not good policy. Not good policy. Do you, and do you understand what I'm saying? Like, you're saying someone's committed a criminal act, but there's no requirement that that be determined anywhere ever, but then a court in civil court, in family court, can say, even though that's never been determined by a legal standard of criminality, I find it happened based on a preponderance or reasonable grounds that it happened. Thus, I have now take away all of the rights. To me, that's just not good policy.
Yeah, so I share Senator Carter's concern that we have the right standard in here, first of all, right off the bat. But I think with the amendment that Senator Waldstreicher just made, first of all, we struck out reasonable grounds, which is that preliminary peace order stuff. And I share his concern that was inappropriate for the bill. So now we're back to preponderance of the evidence. That doesn't, so with that, basically, the only thing this bill does, as I read it, the only thing it does is say that when the judge makes those, I mean, we're back to the current law, except that, and I agree with Senator Lee's proffer here, that all this bill does now is say the judge must state their findings on the record. And that's really pretty much what this bill does, because we're not changing, it's currently preponderance of the evidence in a domestic case. This isn't a criminal case. This is a preponderance, this is a domestic, a child visitation case. You're in family court. And so it really, other than making the court put on the record why they're doing something, I don't see anything else this bill does. So, thank you.
Oh, just to make sure, when I was explaining the bill, I just wanted to make sure that I did go over page 3 of the bill, of the House bill, going down, beginning on line 16 through 30. That's the other portion of the bill that the amendments did not take out. So that's any reasonable effort to protect the child or a party to a custody or visitation order from the other party may not be considered an unjustified denial or interference with visitation granted by a custody or visitation order.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to ask, I mean, the issues that that Senator Carter raises are issues that precede any changes this bill might make, right? I mean, we're not changing any standard by which a person is making a custody or visitation decision. All we're asking is for an explanation of those decisions. Am I right in that? Okay, thank you. So I support it, because I think there are too often judges make these decisions and the parties don't know exactly why. And so I think it's really helpful to both sides to be able to have this kind of explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know Delegate DeMay is listening in because she just sent me an email about what we're doing right now. To my mind, she's the expert around here on these things. But I've always understood that in a family law situation, it's not like a criminal case. You don't have to prove your case beyond a reasonable doubt. It's basically what the judge ultimately feels is in the best interest of the child that governs. So now Delegate DeMay has just sent me this email saying, she just sent me a second one. First one says, offer clear and convincing as a possible solution. Excuse me?
Idea that she was willing to concede or move to the idea of clear and convincing, because I think the standard should be very high when you're talking about taking away someone's right to custody of their child. That is what I believe. But I want to be clear. I understand everything that you're saying. You're saying this is already the law and that we're just putting it into making the judge rule articulate it. I actually have never seen or been involved in any family law case where the judge did not articulate, but I guess this happens if people believe there's a need to make them do so.
We're okay with option of the amendment.
I'd like to make a counter amendment for clear and convincing.
All right, so that's adopted first, and then Senator Carter, do you want to come back with clear and convincing, or are you?
Well, I can tell where that's going, so I won't.
Okay.
But I think that, just because we might have made policy that may not have been the greatest policy in the past doesn't mean that we could keep piling on it. At some point, you might want to concede that maybe we should go back and let's revamp the whole thing. Just my thoughts.
I'd like to move the bill as amended. Favorable.
Vice Chair Waldstrom.
Yes.
Senator Lee.
Yes.
Senator Castleman.
Yes.
Senator Heddleman.
Yes.
Senator West.
Yes.
Senator Sidnor.
Yes.
Senator Jackson.
Yes.
Senator Bailey.
Yes.
Senator Carter.
For Senator Lee and against my better judgment, yes.
Senator Huff.
Yes.
Chairman Smith.
Yes, for Senator Lee. All right. So that's good. All right. Uh, 967.
House Bill 967 authorizes Baltimore City to place 2 speed cameras on I-83, subject to existing signage requirements. The bill also requires real-time display of a driver's speed. For from the fines collected as a result of violations enforced by the cameras. Any balance remaining after recovering costs must be remitted to the comptroller for distribution to the Baltimore City Department of Transportation to be used solely to assist in covering the cost of roadway improvements on I-83. The bill terminates June 30th, 2026. There is one amendment, that's number 126718/1. The amendment would clarify that any revenues collected are supplemental to existing funding. It would require that for 90 days after a camera is installed, only warnings may be issued, and it moves the effective date up from October 1 to June 1 of this year.
I mean, is anyone, you have,
Baltimore City Senators, Baltimore County, just want to give you all an opportunity to speak on the bill, and then
Senator West?
The people, this would be the only interstate highway in the state of Maryland that has speed cameras. And there are lots of interstate highways around. So most of the people who use the Jones Falls Expressway to go downtown and back are Senator Hedelman's constituents and my constituents. So this is nothing less, in my view, than an attempt by Baltimore City to extract as much money out of my constituents and Senator Hedelman's constituents as possible, because they don't live in the city, and therefore it's easy for the city to extract money from them, because they won't have any grounds to complain to the elected officials in Baltimore City about what's happening. If we're going to put speed cameras on the Jones Falls Expressway, we should authorize Baltimore County to put speed cameras on Interstate 95 at the Harford County line and the Baltimore City line, and again at the Baltimore City line and at the Howard County line. And I suspect there are lots of other senators who would want to authorize their counties to put speed cameras on interstate highways in their counties. I don't see why in the world we would single out the Jones Falls Expressway in particular, which impacts 2 legislative districts, to exact these fines from people.
I just wanted to, for informational purposes to Senator West, Route 210 in Prince George's County that goes into Charles County has speed cameras.
But that's not an interstate highway. I mean, we could put them all around the D.C. Beltway. Prince George's County could get a lot of money if we put speed cameras all around the D.C. Beltway, and so could Montgomery County.
Yeah,
but we don't do that.
You had mentioned 2 different jurisdictions, so 210 goes into Charles County as well as Prince George's.
Well, a lot of interstates go into multiple jurisdictions. 70 West goes in Baltimore County, Frederick County, Washington County, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I understand. I was just mentioning, you said this will be the only one. There's currently cameras on 210. That's what my statement.
I'm sorry. I meant to say this would be the only interstate highway in the state of Maryland.
Gotcha. All right. Cool.
Actually, I have a question. Yeah, I remember I voted against doing 210 last year because I knew we'd be here, and you'll be here for the next 100 years, continue to add them. But I have a question actually at the program, because I noticed this year more than ever we have all these bills to add speed cameras in, and I've never had delegate or Senate plates on my car ever. If you have delegate or Senate plates, Delegate McConkey used to offer an amendment every year on these to say that you will get a ticket, because my understanding is the MVA or whatever can't figure out to get you a ticket. So I've always been told if you have delegate or Senate plates, you don't get the ticket. Do you know about that? You've gotten speed camera tickets on these?
You get a full registration with your Senate plates now.
Okay, so what I'm asking, though, is it used to be, and I don't know because I never put it in my car, it used to be, I just thought if that was still the rule, maybe that would solve people's zest to have so many speed cameras. So the question is, do you actually get them if you have those plates? Have you gotten the speed camera ticket before?
So my colleague beside me says, yes, he's gotten one. And but I do know it is clearly on my registration. and I have sent in
Have
place.
you gotten one?
I have not gotten one yet.
I mean, I get them all the time.
Oh.
I'm just curious if anybody else gets them, but I have regular plates like all our constituents.
Yeah, actually, look, actually, your delegates or your Senate tags are assigned to your vehicle. Your vehicle's registration is already with Motor Vehicle Administration under your original tag number, so they certainly can send it to you. If they don't send it directly to you, they'll send it to the Senate President's office, but you'll get it. It's just,
I honestly, I don't know.
Yeah, just on Senator Huff's question, I mean, I know that my connection with MVA on the tunnel, that when that went, my automatic pay got disassociated from it, so I got notices that I was using the tunnel without paying because my automatic payment thing had stopped accidentally. So, yeah, the Easy Pass. Well, it's reading off my plate. Easy Pass is reading off my plate. It knew it was me. Yeah. On this, I know we've discussed a number of times about. I understand that Baltimore City Police have far more things to worry about than enforcing speed restrictions on this highway. But in most of our jurisdictions, the state police would be patrolling this roadway, and it seems to me the appropriate solution here is to simply give this to the state police to patrol. And that may solve all the problems. We don't need to jump to speed cameras. We just let the state police patrol this piece of the interstate like you do all other pieces of the interstate, then outside of Baltimore City, then the problem would be solved. Thank you.
assuming that we'll be having another voting session, would it be all right just to hold it briefly till the next time we? Thank you.
House Bill 619 authorizes the placement of speed cameras in Prince George's County, of course. Speed cameras on highways and residential districts with a maximum speed limit of 35 miles per hour. This would mirror an authority that Montgomery County already has.
Actually, what the bill does, a couple of years ago, so I live in the rural area of Prince George's County, and we've got some issues with folks from Southern Maryland, Calvert, Charles, St. Mary's County, running through the back roads, running bikers off the roads, running off the road, kids at the bus stops. But anyway, and coincidentally, there were other members within Prince George's County delegation who had the same types of challenges, not so much in the rural area, but in other parts of the county. And so the chair of ENT, Delegate Barbe, Chair Barbe, suggested that Prince George's may want to, combine their efforts and have the local authorities make the decision. The local authorities would make the decision where these cameras would be placed if warranted. So it's not as if I can say I need them here, which is where I would like to say that, but the local authorities would have to do it. Just says it mirrors what occurs in Montgomery County. Local legislation, I move favorable. I need you, Jack, because you drive up my street all the time, man.
Roll it. Let me see what you want to do. Senator Castle, yep.
So there's a lot of strikeouts here. So ins and outs. So originally as it came in, it had some other language in here. So now this is literally we're just putting Montgomery County or Prince George's County. That's all. We're not making any other changes to the.
As it came in, it also had additional authorization where the county could install a speed camera in a school zone with any speed limit as opposed to just with one that's 20 miles per hour, and that was struck by the House.
And this is one of those, it's not, this is one of those highway, we ran through this highway definition a couple of days ago. This is just this is not a state highway, this is just a roadway.
Right, highway in the vehicle law essentially
It's a
means
county, it's a road that's constructed by Prince George's County, not by the state of Maryland. And it's going
Correct.
through a residential district
Correct,
with the maximum speed limit of 35 miles per hour.
correct.
And then also in a school zone.
The school zone part is a part that was struck out of the bill by the House.
In a school zone. And then, so then what about, now, okay, so Prince, then we have number 3, that's not changing, that's, Prince George's County already has the Indian Head Highway, that's the one that the Senator was just talking about. That's the one that was passed yet last year, that's what that is.
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Senator Jackson made a motion. It's been seconded. Is everyone okay? Or you want to do roll call? Is everyone good?
No, not good.
All right. So, Senator Huff is no.
Yeah.
And Senator Bailey's no. Okay. All right.
Bob, you vote for that? Which one? You just roll on that vote. You okay with that? I'll just check.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. He said yes.
Yes, I said no.
You said no or yes? Okay, no. All right, sorry, you're right. Okay. Bill passes. So,
So 626, right, is next?
correct, yes, House Bill 626 is next. Josh.
House Bill 626 authorizes Prince George's counties and municipalities in the county to place vehicle height monitoring systems on highways in the county if authorized by the appropriate governing body after notice and a public hearing, similar to the authorization currently in place for Baltimore City and beginning in October of this year, Baltimore County. The bill establishes requirements for the county and municipalities that must be met before a system can be installed. Specifically, work groups must be convened and perform specified tasks, including the development of maps, processes, and exemptions. Accordingly, should the authorization be used, the government, local jurisdiction may issue warnings or citations to a vehicle owner for violating a state or local law restricting the presence of certain vehicles at certain times. A local or state, a local government must issue a warning for a first violation, and a maximum fine for a second citation is $250 and $500 for a third or subsequent violation. And the bill also makes certain technical changes.
Senator Jackson.
Favorable.
Any other further? So it's House Bill 626.
It's just the vehicle heights like we did last year in Baltimore, right? And the truck people are fine with it, right?
Jack, you fine with that?
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know. Do you want to, Senator Jackson? Do you want to?
I'm sorry.
Are the truck people okay with it?
Yes. Absolutely.
Actually, who's the counsel for that? Didn't they come in and oppose? Just to be. Did you see the testimony from the motor truck?
Yeah, so their testimony was unfavorable. I know they participated in the Baltimore County legislation last year.
Yeah. I just want to make sure we're on the up and up here.
Quickly, sir. Mr. Chairman.
Say it again.
I actually spoke too quickly on that one.
So last time, my memory, maybe somebody from Baltimore County, wasn't it Charles? Was it? It was. I thought it was Baltimore County last time, and the deal was they worked out the specific routes that they were going to have the cameras on. Correct. What they were afraid of is they didn't want these vehicle monitoring height things just all over the county everywhere. So they negotiated with you all to put it in the certain routes. And then once it was all negotiated, we voted for it. And the city, now let's talk back to you. Baltimore City had a similar deal too. There might even be another bill in on that this year. But- So I guess if this is just county-wide with no direction to the road and it's not worked out, that would be a pretty dramatic break from what we had done with Baltimore City and Baltimore County, where it was confined down to just a couple routes where they were going to put them.
I remember that very well. Only the county executive.
Thank you. To the senator's point, that negotiation happened between the Maryland Truckers Association and the sponsor to get it to the point where they were supportive. And I think this bill actually has a letter of support from the Maryland Truckers Association. It was not. Oh, I thought it was support. Okay, thank you. I retract.
And Senator Jackson, can you just engage and see if you can replicate the magic from Baltimore County? Okay. All right. Let's do House Bill. Sure. Yes. Absolutely.
Did House Bill 100, and I know, and the focus was on adding another bill onto that one, but I know that were there any amendments to House Bill 100 itself?
No. Can we come back to that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Let's do. So we got. Is it House? It's House Bill 98. Senate Bill 98. My bad. Is that Heather? Okay, I got it.
So if you look at your email packets, I recommend looking at Amendment 8384771. This is the amendment that combines multiple of the separate amendments so that way you can see it all in one document. However, the amendments themselves are broken up individually, so you can discuss them separately. This is Senate Bill 98, and the amendment that I'm referring to is Amendment 838477/1. It would have been in yesterday's email. Are you making copies for him? I think a copy is going to be made for you, Senator. So on one of the first, so the amendment, it conforms to the House bill, and that amendment has already been adopted by JPR. That was adopted in March. The next amendment on page 4 of the reprint, it strikes the language referring to the disability discrimination, and it adds a new subsection B to clarify the application of the bill to discrimination on disability. So B1 and B2 are modeled after the federal standard of discrimination on disability as it pertains to federal law for post-secondary schools. And then also on page 4 of the bill, after lines 21, it adds language that JPR previously discussed but has not adopted. And this is this subtitle does not require non-public pre-kindergarten program or non-public school to adopt any rule, regulation, or policy that conflicts with its religious or moral teachings. And this language is modeled after the boost language. And then a new amendment. This is based off of Senator Heddleman's amendment that's in your packet. However, I just incorporated it into this one so you could see it all together. And that appears on page 8 of the bill, which specifies specific information that must be printed in a student handbook. Sure. The amendment number is 838477/1.
Eight three 8477/1. All right, so then we've got this before us. We get motions for favorable on this amendment. Is everyone okay? Great, okay. We'll go on to wait, does Senator Castley? No, we're good?
I'm good. It's
Okay.
based upon what council
Okay, got
just
it,
read
got it.
in.
Senator
I don't
West
have
is
another
nothing.
amendment.
We're good? You're good? Okay. All right, move adoption of the favorable committee, move favorable as amended?
Actually, can I look at council's reprint real quick?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
You don't mind, just.
No, go
real
ahead.
quick.
I just wanted to let you know that with the help of Josh, we've gotten that squared away. The amendments suffice the truckers, so if we could revisit 626 would be good.
Just giving the members time to read the inline amendment. All right, we're good. All right, everyone's squared away? All right, so the motion is for favorable with amendments. Everyone's good? All right, excellent. And now we have the cross file. Heather? House Bill 1. 55, the motion is to conform the House bill to what we just did with the Senate bill. Is everyone okay with that? Excellent. Okay, great. All right, now we'll move back to House Bill 626. Josh, we have some breaking events. Go ahead.
Yeah, the amendments that were done in the House to the bill are the same amendments that were done to the Baltimore County bill last year, so the Motor Truck Association no longer opposes the bill. Yeah, so essentially they require certain work groups to be convened before these systems are implemented to kind of determine which routes the trucks use to help in determining where the system should be placed.
Amendment, favorable with amendment?
So it's an amendment that was made by the House, so it would be favorable here.
Favorable here, so, thanks.
So we don't need to adopt additional amendments, is that right? We just need to conform the Senate bill to the House.
Okay, so move favorable.
Bill 626, those amendments are already incorporated. You've contacted them, the Truckers Association, they're good. All right. It's been
Thank you.
seconded. Is everyone okay? All right, great.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. All right, now we're going to move on to
You got enough cameras down
Senator Carr.
Georgia County? You gotta take an Orwellian nightmare down there. You got cameras,
What's the Senate bill, though? What's the House bill number?
Senate bill.
Senate bill.
And I think Sandy needs to queue them up.
853? All right, we're going to move on to Senator Carter, Senate Bill 853. We have DJS queued up to answer questions and facilitate the discussion. So while that is happening, we're just going to go off mic real quick while she sets up the feed and while we contact DJ.
That's
Hi, I'm here. Can you guys hear me? Yes.
so
All right,
when she's speaking, just a reminder, my mic is on.
got it. Great. All right, Betsy, well, thanks a lot for, good to see you again. Thanks for joining us. We're going to kick it over to Jamie to give an overview of the bill, and then we'll dive in with questions. So thank you for taking the time to help us with the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 853 makes numerous changes to the juvenile justice process in the state. It generally implements the recommendations of the Juvenile Justice Reform Council. Among its provisions, the bill limits circumstances under which a child younger than 13 is subject to the jurisdiction of the juvenile court. It expands the use of informal adjustments, establishes limitations on the terms of probation improved by a juvenile court, the use of detention and out-of-home placements. It creates a permanent commission on the juvenile justice reform and emerging best practices. It extends the termination date of the Juvenile Justice Reform Council, and finally establishes numerous reporting requirements. The bill takes effect June 1st, 2021. The House amended the bill, the provisions of the bill, and that amendment is before the committee. It is Amendment 173429/1. The amendment's provisions struck proposed changes to the definition of delinquent act. It corrected errors in the bill and made some conforming changes consistent with the recommendations of the Juvenile Justice Reform Council. It requires DJS residential education programs to include optional programs in agriculture, requires the governor to include in the annual budget an appropriation of at least $2 million for a grant to Roca Baltimore, and specifies that the chair of the JJRC may not be employed or under contract with DJS. There's also a further technical amendment in your packet that's 268075. It clarifies some of the language relating to informal adjustments. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Tolentino.
Really appreciative that Ms. Tolentino is here because I look at her as very much an expert on this, but I just want to remind the committee that this Juvenile Justice Reform Council came out of legislation that we passed, and initially members of this committee, beginning with former Chairman Zirkin, myself, and Senator West were on the commission. We were on this commission, we're counsel for 2 years, and then of course Chairman Smith replaced former Chair Zirkin, and in the House, Senator Jackson was a member. So we've got 4 members of this committee that worked on this effort. And if you recall, the original intent, as articulated by Senator Zirkin, was that we needed to reform our juvenile justice system in a similar way to what we did with the Justice Reinvestment Act. And so listening to experts and stakeholders, a cross-section of those people, we came up with recommendations that have now been reduced into this bill. And all of the recommendations in this council were voted upon unanimously, and that included state's attorneys, public defenders, senators, delegates, and all of the other experts. I just wanted to give that kind of background. Thank you.
Yeah, good.
Just a question. What is page 11? It's bracketing out all these crimes. What exactly is the purpose of this section doing? It's listing what they can be on home detention, and it brackets out and removes possession of non-controlled substance, disturbing the peace, malicious destruction of property, all this stuff. So what theft? So what happens in this cases now in these offenses? Because it looks like we had said before they would have to be home. They would be home monitored. What would happen now when we bracket them out?
Right. So, Senator, that language, are you looking at the language starts at line 9?
Yes.
So that's the
child may not be committed.
A court from committing a child to DJS for out-of-home placement if their most serious offense is listed on that. So it retains possession of marijuana, but it strikes the other offenses that are listed. But then the new language is that they couldn't commit for out-of-home placement for an offense that would be a misdemeanor if committed by an adult, unless that offense involved a firearm and the child has been adjudicated delinquent on a prior occasion for an offense involving a firearm or a technical violation. So that's those technical probation violations.
All right, so I'm still
it would
confused.
Restrict out-of-home placement from being used in those situations.
Yeah, but I thought right now the way the law is written, that we are saying already 2 through 8 that are in the law that they have to be. I thought those were basically home detention now. That's what we said, right? That we're saying right now in the current law, if they get one of these are all like more minor offenses, and we're not going to put them. We're going to basically use home detention for them, correct?
Right. That they couldn't be taken out of their home.
Yeah, and so when you bracket them out, well, what happens now if you commit any of these offenses?
Let's see. Possession or purchase of a non-controlled substance under 5618. I'd have to look, but I believe that's a misdemeanor. I believe the reason why these were left was because they were misdemeanors. Betsy, I don't know if you can hear me, but feel free to correct me on any of this. But because now it's being taken to any offense that would be a misdemeanor if committed by an adult, those are really subsumed by this new language.
So is that the new law then? Is any misdemeanor then now becomes home detention versus? So that's the new law then. Is any misdemeanor that is not listed here as home detention, not out of placement? So if it's any misdemeanor but it's not involving a firearm, okay, I think I understand that now. Then I got it.
I have a number of questions. I'll just finish off where Senator Huff left off for a second. So before we specified the misdemeanors, now we're just broadly including all misdemeanors except it involves a firearm or it's a prior occasion for an offense involving an adjudicated delinquent on a prior occasion for offense involving a firearm. So currently, the department has discretion if a youth has been repeatedly beating people up, to say they're not using firearms, they just keep beating everybody up. And it doesn't rise to a level of felony, but, you know, after the 30th or so kid, they decide enough kids beat the crap out of them, so we're going to put you in detention. They would not have that discretion anymore, right?
And I don't think that's quite accurate,
Okay.
but it's hard for me to tell when I can jump in. So if this is the right time, let me know.
Fine with me. Go ahead. I mean, why does this not mean, I mean, a misdemeanor, if I just assault somebody, it doesn't rise above the level of misdemeanor, but I can do that as many times as I want, and I would never be subject to out-of-home placement, if I was a minor, excuse me.
Well, for an out-of-home placement, but I think I heard the word detention in there first. So this is for commitment. So not detention. This is after adjudication and disposition. This is commitment. So what the council said was for misdemeanor offenses, we're not going to have commitment be an option unless firearms are available or a technical violation of probation, meaning, not showing up for school. And commitment to DJS would not be an option. That does not eliminate the ability for the court to commit the young person to the Department of Social Services, or if there's a significant behavioral health concern, to the Department of or the Department of Health.
I get you, but you didn't answer my question. I'm sorry. Let's cut to the chase here.
It allows for commitment to other agencies.
Can we just cut to the chase, because you're running around in circles here? This says the only people that can actually detain juveniles would be the Department of Juvenile Services. So I'm not worried about those other people. And currently, if you have a juvenile who's on his 30th assault and beating kids up throughout the state, you would still not, under this language, the Department of Juvenile Services could not detain them couldn't use out-of-home placement, even if they're on their 30th assault in a 2-month period. You still could not do an out-of-home placement, correct?
So you're right for that, but not for detention. In detention, we would be able to use detention for a habitual offender. The council's recommendation and what's written into the bill is that detention is not applicable for misdemeanor offenses unless they've had 2 prior adjudications within a 12-month period.
Where is that?
If you have a habitual offender, detention is completely an available option.
Where is that in the bill, please?
So that it would be, Jamie, you might need to help me up. I might not be able to get there very fast. Let me see. That's in the detention section. And I'll look for it. Let me go on mute real quick.
No, it's trying to figure out for subsequent, so you get a second, how many assaults can you get?
I believe
Saying,
that.
did you have 30 assaults, or that says that there's only a subsequent within 12 months, you can, I think it would be your third within 12, I don't know.
It would be the third, but that doesn't remove the option for community detention, electronic monitoring, GPS, evening reporting centers, all those other sort of interventions we have in lieu of formal incarceration are available all the time. But for misdemeanors, it would be, if you have the habitual offender, it's 2 prior adjudications within 12 months, or of course, the other exception is the handgun violation. And I can tell you where to find that.
Page 10, lines 12 to 19. That's before here.
Page 10. 12 and 19.
That's pre-hearing. That's all that is.
Did you, I think it's page 10, line 12. Did you find that? I can't hear everyone all the time, I'm sorry. Page 10, line 19.
But that section relates to pre-hearing detention. Doesn't say, I'm looking at specifically the habitual beater-upper ruining the community, where I know that if I put him on a bracelet, a necklace, or monitoring, that doesn't prevent Junior from continuing to beat people up, with all due respect. So I'm just trying to see if I have that kid that's just going around beating everybody up, but the section you referred to me is pre-hearing detention. The only thing I'm seeing so far that applies is the section we just read, which says, I don't have the right to detain him if he's a habitual beater-upper. So, assaulting people.
Well,
So,
I think we have detention ability. We do not have the ability to commit to an out-of-home long-term placement through DJS. The other agencies are able to be, the young person could be committed to. So if there are other issues that are sort of driving that, those would be able to be served through other agencies. But we're saying the out-of-home secure treatment, long-term treatment in juvenile services would not be an option.
okay,
Still,
so,
other agencies are an option, and still detention in your scenario would be an option.
okay, so in my scenario where he doesn't have a substance abuse problem, now we want to commit him somewhere, put him in some sort of a detention post-hearing. What can be done for that? What can be done under this bill?
For an assault case with potential substance use.
No substance. I'm sorry. No substance abuse. Forget social services. Forget Department of Health. Forget the mental hygiene and all those people. This is just somebody who likes to beat people up repeatedly. What can they? As I look at page 11, it says that I can't commit him anywhere because he didn't use a firearm. How am I misreading
We would be
that?
using our community-based resources and escalating those types of interventions depending on the young person's needs. And that can range from, family supports to evidence-based services to behavioral health interventions to evening reporting center activities to using the CHOICE program or the YAP program. ROCA is another example. We would be layering in services and really increasing our supervision of the young person. Now, if the activities are taking place in the school, we'll definitely also have the school system as another outlet to help assess and respond to the behaviors. The school system is a system that's federally, has federal oversight on how to address disabilities, place kids in the most appropriate education settings where they can be able to receive their education services through in a very secure and supported environment. If that's, if this is a school-based type situation.
No. Okay, so just to cut to the chase, because under this bill, for everything you just said, there would be no way, as long as Junior doesn't use a gun, he can go around the community and you have all these services, everybody's looking at him, but he's a juvenile, and he or she can continue to go around and beat people up while he's getting all these services. He's not using a gun. It doesn't rise to a felony assault. He just beats kids up every day throughout the community, destroys the community, intimidates people, and the only thing we can do is say, we have one more program. Meanwhile, while he's going through all these programs, all these services, all this assistance, there's nothing to prevent him from still beating people up. So, which is a big change in the law, because as I understand it currently, if Junior in my community is wholesale beating people up day after day after day, he can be, we can put him in a detention, juvenile detention for that. But we're taking that power away. And I got it.
Well, we can still use juvenile detention. We just cannot use out-of-home placement. And really, if we did have a scenario, as you described, with a young person who's sort of having this habitual behavior, there's most likely some significant underlying issues, whether that's a behavioral health issue or some other issue going in the home, like abuse or neglect. And that's when we really rely on our other partners to intervene and to layer in the appropriate support services to hopefully allow this young person then to be successful in their community and to be able to be in the community without being a risk to others. But there are a lot of interventions going through all the program array that we have, as well as layering in then the behavioral health system and as well as the social services system.
Okay, let me go with my other questions, because that one's going nowhere.
All right, can we do one pause with Senator Huff real quick and come right back? All right. Okay.
All right, just my question on that one is, so we're talking about for this is up to 17, right? So this is all juveniles? I'm sorry, Betsy.
It would be to age 18.
Up to 18. So if you're so if you're 17, you're 18 though, this doesn't apply to you, right? Because you're 18, you're an adult, so it's 17, right? Got it. So Yeah, but I mean, there's some serious misdemeanors, like stalking's in there. So you might have a 17-year-old that gets hit twice with, like, I'm thinking stalking that's one, and so you can't detain them. Is that right?
We would not be able to use detention for a first-time offense for a misdemeanor. We would be able to use community detention, GPS monitoring, evening reporting centers. If it was, again, that sort of habitual offense where we saw it twice in 1 year, then detention would be an option. But we also have shelter care. If we need to remove a young person from their home, we can use shelter care. We have shelter care placements available around the state where, it removes the person from their community or their home, but not in an incarcerated facility.
So that language, adjudicated.
And also 16.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, you please.
Okay. So the child's been adjudicated delinquent at least twice. So does that mean on the second time you can detain them, or is it the third?
It would be the third. They would need 2 prior adjudicated offenses within 12 months.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of concerning because you could have a 17-year-old that at 16 had an assault and has 2 stalkings. That you have to wait till the third offense when they're 17. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So back to the answer you just gave, you said that if it was twice, you could, but then you referred us, the justification for that on this bill is page 10, line 12. Page 10, line 12 refers to it says cannot be placed in detention before a hearing. So that 12 months applies to a pre-hearing detention. It doesn't relate to post-hearing detentions. So post-hearing detentions, as I read this bill, not bumps you back to the part we were just on, which is on page 11, which says you can't do it at all. So you could detain them before the hearing, but not after the hearing. So you should just delay the hearing for a year maybe, but.
And it's just you can't commit them to a juvenile services facility. You could commit them to a mental health facility like a residential treatment center. We have several of those in the state. Yeah. It could also be committed to the Department of Social Services where we have group homes, foster care, and another continuum of services there.
Got it. Going back to the beginning of the bill, it says that on page 4, we're saying that we've totally taken jurisdiction away from anybody under 13. You have no jurisdiction for DJS. Correct? Page 4.
Not everyone under 13. There's an exception for certain crimes for 10 to 12-year-olds.
Okay, it says in addition, a 10 to 12-year-old who's alleged to, if it would adult, that would be a crime punishable by life imprisonment, first-degree child abuse, or sexual abuse of a minor under whatever that section means, or a second-degree murder, or armed carjacking, or a second-degree rape, continuing course of conduct with a child under whatever other criminal law article, third-degree sex offense. So those are the only ones for which DJS would have jurisdiction for a child under 13. Correct?
Yes. For a delinquency, DJS would be able to intervene if there was a complaint for a child in need of supervision.
Okay. So, and the reason for not involving children, say a 12-year-old, that cutoff, that bright line cutoff, because let's face it, 13-year-olds are not fungible. I mean, there's 13-year-olds are all different, 12-year-olds are all different. We're going a bright line regardless of their size, their maturity, their offenses, their whatever. We're just doing a bright line and doing a cutoff at 12. We're not giving any discretion for DJS or a court to say, okay, I know you're only 12, but geez, this is, we boom, it's cut off at 13. Why do we want to have that elimination of all discretion? Why can't we trust DJS and the courts to act appropriately without us doing a bright line test?
Well, I think the council heard and reviewed a lot of research about adolescent brain development and really how young people would experience or do experience the juvenile justice system, and knowing that kids, certainly under 10, and our 10, 11, and 12-year-olds don't really have the capacity to understand the court system. And in almost every case, when they do come forward to the court when they're under 13, competency is raised. And that's the process to determine whether or not the young person could even understand the court process to be able to participate in their defense and in the process. There needs to be a lot of assessments. When competency is being raised, detention is not permitted because we don't want to use incarceration when we're not even sure if a young person understands the process. It's a very lengthy process. And then sometimes there are attainment services. And then most likely these cases are dismissed. And that's the data that the council reviewed. And when looking at the issue with all the stakeholders, the state's attorneys and the public defenders, the department and other state agencies, this was sort of the carefully crafted sort of exception for these 10 to 12-year-olds with offenses that we do think may pose a significant risk of public safety and that the court needed to be able to have access. But I think we have to remember that with all young people, there's so many other systems to intervene. We have the child in need of supervision system within the Department of Juvenile Services that allows law enforcement, schools, and parents to file a complaint for kids that may need guidance, treatment, or rehabilitation if they pose a risk to themselves or they're ungovernable. There's that whole process, and every sort of intervention the department has is available for those young people except for detention. We can use shelter care. We can commit them to out-of-home placements through the court process. Everything's available, but it's outside of that sort of delinquency system where we're really directed at holding young people accountable. And that's why competency is raised, because the young person has to be able to understand that. And 90% of the cases for kids under 13 end up being withdrawn or dismissed. So I think the council really weighed all that when drafting this or recommending this policy change to the General Assembly. We also have the Department of Social Services system to intervene, the Maryland Department of Health system to intervene, the schools can intervene, the local care teams. So there's lots of other systems out there to support these young kids who may need, or their families who need support and services. Yeah. If you go through the process, the delinquency process, and competency is raised, during that whole time, the kids and the family get nothing. So we have kids who fall through the cracks. This is a way to make sure we have all the partners together at the table to really intervene and support them.
Yeah, I just add that it's a sad indictment of DJS and the system that they're not able to accommodate these young people within the framework of the existing law. That we have to actually pass a law that says, oh, DJS, you're so stupid that you would do this kid this way, that we have to actually pass a law and tell ourselves what to do. But that aside, moving on to page 7, on line 24, it says that for a complaint that alleges the commission of an act that would be a felony if committed by an adult, the intake officer is not required to forward the complaint to the state's attorney. If the intake officer proposes a matter for an informal adjustment for a felony, and the act did not involve the intentional causing or attempt to cause the death or physical injury of another. So, of course, that's the intake officer making that determination. So, why do we want to hide these things from the state's attorney? We don't trust state's attorneys anymore? What's the problem?
So this recommendation, again, was a recommendation from the council with state's attorney input. And right now, when a complaint comes to the Department of Juvenile Services, we really only have the authority to divert young people with misdemeanors. The council felt that it was really important for the department to have the authority to use diversion for those non-violent felony offenses, to be able to use all the services we have right at the front door. A lot of times, young people come through the system and it may be a felony and they go to court and their case is dismissed and they get no services. In this case, for maybe a first-time nonviolent felony, we can quickly assess that young person, get them services, get them programming, whatever they may need. If they don't complete that programming, then we go to court. So it just provides this opportunity for really early intervention, and it allows to make sure we're treating all kids around the state in the same way. So by having the department have that ability, we can ensure there's a consistent application and that the system is fair and all kids with nonviolent felonies are being reviewed and assessed in the same manner.
But of course, you realize that everything you just said can be done and still send a copy of to the state's attorney. You could do all that stuff, everything you just said, you could still do all of that currently and still send a copy to the state's attorney for their evaluation. So all we're doing here is hiding this incident from the state's attorney. We're not, so the state's attorney won't be able, it's a felony. So a felony is probably, it may involve more than just this child. It may be a ring of people doing things like a drug ring or something like that. And by sending the copy of the complaint to the state's attorney, maybe the state's attorney can realize this kid is just a part of a bigger ring. But now we're going to hide that from the state's attorney. We're not even going to send him a copy of this. We're just going to make it disappear. Because currently, you can still do everything you just said and still notify the state's attorney. Just inform them of what this is up. But now we're going to hide that event from the state's attorney. And that's what I'm not saying. Why the state's attorney doesn't have to prosecute. They don't have to prosecute it. They can just look at it and have the information. But we're not even going to send it to them. We're not going to give them any notice of it. Why would we not send them notice of this?
And the intent is to ensure that the department can have the authority to make these decisions. And I think our state's attorney representative felt that the department is equipped to make these decisions. But there's also an appeal process with all intake decisions. So law enforcement can appeal to the state's attorney. Victims can appeal to the state's attorney. The state's attorney can get information from their law enforcement partners and prosecute a case. And so this just allows for that early intervention. And
no, it doesn't allow for early intervention, with all due respect. It hides it from the state's attorneys. Jesus.
All right, Senator Cassidy, let's just.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll go on to the next page.
No, let her respond. Let's just give her. Give a pause.
It's very frustrating because. Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, Ms. Tolentino, please proceed.
Page 8. This deals with.
Can we give her an opportunity to respond to your prior question?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. There was a lot of. I couldn't hear maybe that last part of the question. Can you repeat it?
I don't remember anymore. You said she was responding.
Okay, so we'll move on to page 8.
Page 8, line 26. I'm looking at line 26, but it says the intake officer on line 22. Can you hear me? I'm sorry. I don't want to get it. You can hear me? All right. Line 22 on page 8 talks about the intake officer shall propose informal adjustment of the matter if it says the child who is the subject of the complaint has not been previously adjudicated delinquent. That's nice. But then it says the complaint alleges the child committed an act that would be a misdemeanor if committed by an adult. But as we know, some misdemeanors can be, pretty violent, and it says they shall propose an informal adjustment. It doesn't say may propose an informal adjustment. They have to propose an informal adjustment if the complaint alleges a misdemeanor. And why would we not give the intake officer an option to look at that and say, well, that was a pretty bad misdemeanor?
So again, this was a unanimous decision by the council and all the stakeholders to require an informal adjustment for a first-time misdemeanor offender. So that means we're going to do the assessment and the services. Again, there's still an appeal process available. Secondly, if the young person doesn't comply with the service agreement, then that case can go forward to court. So it doesn't eliminate court, but it says we are going to try to do an informal service intervention at the very beginning, the first time that young person comes to our attention. Now, if it doesn't work, we go to court, and we have all the other tools that we would have available to us through the formal court process.
Okay, and then on page 9, line 17, it says, subject to paragraph 2 of section, at any time before adjudicatory hearing, the court may hold the proceedings in abeyance for informal adjustment if it is consented to by 1 is the state's attorney, 2 is a child, and 3 is the court. The victim doesn't have to consent, right? No matter what the matter, the victim's not considered in this, right?
No, well, so when we discussed this through the council, this issue did come up, and the state's attorney, really did respond with that. That's really their job, is consulting with the victim. They should be representing what their victim wants, and it requires all the parties to agree. So this is the case. If the case made it to court and all the parties agree, the state's attorney, the defense counsel and the court that it should go back to intake for an informal adjustment, then they can do that. But you need consent from everyone and able to and to have the ability to do that process.
Okay, everybody but the victim. Okay. On page 10.
Okay, guys, let's break this up real quick. Let's go to Senator Carter, and then we'll go to Senator Huff. We'll come back to Senator
All right,
Cassidy.
you just come back with more? Okay, I'll put a line here, and I'll start back up here.
Yep,
Thank you.
absolutely. Go ahead,
So-
Senator Carter.
I also recall from the discussions, and I just want to offer maybe a point of clarification that might actually cause some level of satisfaction to the senator. So there are many instances where a case may actually get to court, and the state may not actually be equipped to actually prove that case beyond a reasonable doubt. And so in these kinds of instances, this would actually be a better result to send the case back for an informal adjustment for services as opposed to just dismiss the case right out, and then there would be no satisfaction for the victim. So this is one of the things that I remember specifically was contemplated, that oftentimes you have a situation where the case is just goes straight through the system. It's not prosecuted, it's the result of a null process or a stat or something else, and there's no services to the kid, there's no satisfaction to the victim. So this, to me, is another tool that if everybody gets there and says, you know what, the best situation to give everybody some modicum of satisfaction and justice is to send it back for informal adjustment. It's just another tool. I just wanted to put that out there to you. It could be an alternative to a straight-up dismissal.
All right, Senator Huff, and then we'll come back to Senator Cassidy.
I was just trying to read on page 7 about felonies where they have discretion, because you said nonviolent, but I'm looking at it. It looks like on line 16 through 20, I'm assuming this feeds into it. If it's a 4-203, a 4-204, which are handgun offenses, so those ones don't apply. Is that correct?
Well, sorry. There we go. Sorry, I'm just getting to where you're referencing. So for the informal adjustment part, yes, if the complaint alleges an act that would be, that alleges the 4203 or the 4204, those are handgun possessions, that has to be forwarded to the state's attorney.
All right, so the intake officer proposed the matter for informal justice for a complaint that alleges the commission of an act that would be a felony if committed by adult, but then it says, so I'm trying to figure out how you said it was nonviolent. So if it's going to be the act did not involve the intentional causing or attempt to cause the death or physical injury to another, did not the intentional causing or attempt to cause the death or physical injury to another. Okay, I see that's what you're saying. Then it'll be, what's interesting, you see you got 14101, but then you didn't, why didn't they list, usually when you do 14101s, they list all the sex offense stuff in there too. So they felt the need to list 14101. Why didn't they list anything else, though?
I'm sorry, I think your question, it was a little hard to hear you, was
Sorry,
why-
so then if you go on page 8, it's just confusing the way it's drafted, because they list it as B, did not attempt to cause the death or physical injury to another. Then they go C, they list 14101s. But why'd they stop at 14101s? If you're going to start explicitly listing, why wouldn't they have listed like sex offenses and all those? What's
Well,
sex
I think
offenses?
the
5101?
idea was basically everything except a crime of violence could be, the department could have the authority to do an informal adjustment. But also then there was like, well, there might be some other offenses that really cause physical injury. So we want to make sure that everything's covered, and we're really looking at those non-violent felonies. So I think our drafters, and Jamie, you may want to add, that sort of putting B and C together covered everything, and then we would have the non-violent felonies where the department would have that sort of independent authority to do a diversion.
I guess what my concern is what, maybe this is a question for Jamie. Jamie, what in B what's in B that would not be covered as a 14101? You see, doesn't B cover all of C?
arson is part of crime of violence, so that wouldn't be necessarily physical injury to another. I think that would be covered under 14101, despite not necessarily having somebody inside of the structure. Let me just double check on that.
Okay, all right.
So I think it's to make sure we go beyond just the 14101 crimes, and that if there is another felony out there where there is, physical injury, then we want to make sure that is not sort of included in this authority that's been given to the department. To really include the cases where there may have been physical harm as not where we would not have the authority without going to the state's attorney. To really sort of make sure we're being very, very clear about the nonviolent felony piece.
All right. Go with Senator. Are you done, Senator Hill? Yeah. All right, Senator Cassidy.
Thank you. Looking on page 4, on lines, this is the section that says, it begins at line 17. It says, a child who is, it talks about when the court would have jurisdiction over somebody less than, at least 13 years, a child that, less than 13 years old, right? In addition to the jurisdiction provided this type, the court has exclusive jurisdiction over a child who is at least 13 years old. And then it says in paragraph 2 there, except as provided in section, a child who is at least 10 years old and alleged to have done any of these acts. And then it lists all the acts. And it includes on number 4 would be second-degree murder, armed carjacking, second-degree rape, continuing course. Was any reason we don't include the attempts on these? Because we have second-degree murder or attempt. We don't include attempted second-degree murder or attempted armed carjacking or attempted second-degree rape. Was that intentional to leave out the attempts, or would you agree that we should include the attempts on those?
I'll shoot that over to Jamie. The council did not specifically address attempt, but generally the charges, at least in my practice, they come in together. Because then they included, making sure we have everything, how the incident arising together. So whatever charges come in, the incident with the lead charge would be included. But Jamie, I'll shift it over to you. I know some of those sections include attempts in the statutory language.
I was just looking to see if those crimes that somebody who's 16 and over could be charged as an adult with, that's page 6, if that would include attempt and other charges against the child. I don't think attempt is specifically addressed in that part of the statute.
Actually, that section that you're looking at, Jamie, on page 6 includes the crime as well as any other crime arising out of the same incident.
Yeah, we have that language, and then and all the life charges, attempt is already included in the statutory language of those code sections.
Right.
As well as first degree rape, attempt is included already in the statutory construction.
But this section doesn't include the predicate language that's on page 6 that's or any other charges arising out of the same incident, which would include the attempts, right? An attempt would be arising out of. Because on page 6 we do include attempted murder in the second degree, attempted rape in the second degree, attempted robbery. On lines 25 through 29, we do include attempts down there.
I think that's covered on page 5 at lines 11 and 12, Senator.
I don't think that means the same.
No, I don't either. I think you probably would need to specify attempt.
Okay, well, I would move that we do include the attempts for those. I realize that it's probably hard to have attempted first-degree child abuse or attempted sexual abuse but certainly for second-degree murder, armed carjacking, second-degree rape, and, yeah, murder, rape, and carjacking, yeah, the 4, 5, and 6 under there.
Your motion is to do what? You want to add it?
Is to add in the attempts for any of those as well.
No, you have it amended, you have it.
Let's pocket that. Can you write that down? Make sure you have that written down somewhere. So when we come back.
Sure.
All right.
Okay, and then next question is on looking at page 12, this talks about the limitations on probation. So I just, sort of a broader question on this one is, it's always been my understanding that probation within the context of juvenile services is not to punish people, but to provide them with the services they need, to monitor them, to make sure they're moving along in life well. It's not intended as a punishment. Is that, am I correct on that?
The purposes of probation in the
juvenile
system are to be able to provide the young person with interventions that would support them.
Okay.
Yes, to provide treatment and services necessary to support them.
Okay, so it looks like what we've done here is on line 6 on page 12, we've said that if it would be a misdemeanor, you go for 6 months, then you come back to the court for 3 months, and for 3 more months, based on good cause, to extend the probation, and then but this is a total period of probation, including any extensions, cannot exceed 1 year. Is there a reason that we would cut Junior off at 1 year, as opposed to allowing the court the discretion to keep continuing the 3-month extensions until the court felt that it was no longer necessary?
So again, this was another one of those recommendations where the council and all the stakeholders considered a lot of the science and research around adolescent brain development and really what's the best practice. What is the best way to get young people to engage in their treatment and to understand that they need to get through some things and to be able to complete this? And the problem is now around the state, many jurisdictions, but uses indefinite probation, and that's really hard for young people to understand what indefinite probation means. And we learned that having determinate sort of timeframes will drive compliance. And so that's why we also bring in the court in these timeframes to be able to see how things are going. Do we need to start, using other services, other systems, sort of transitioning this young person to somewhere else where they can receive their supports? But if there is a public safety issue, if the kid completely AWOL'd from their supervision, or if they committed new crimes, then the court would have all the options available to them.
Where is that?
They could commit the kid to a program. They could use all the services, the sort of more intensive services we have. But if we just have a young person who is not showing up for their appointments, then we need to address that. We need to try to get that young person compliance, and then we need to sort of identify what services we can connect them to in the community for a long-term intervention. That's what the other services, other systems are designed to do. But if there is a public safety, if there is a delinquency issue, then we can continue on through other avenues.
So, and how long can you continue on through those other avenues?
Well, if the young person was committed, they could be committed for a long period of time to a treatment program. They could be committed to the Department of Social Services if it seems to be an issue within the family, or if it's a long-term behavioral health program, or a long-term behavioral health need, then they should be transitioned to the Maryland Department of Health and their programming. Same thing with the Department of Disabilities. We want to make sure we're connecting those young people to those agencies, and that would all be available. As well as the court can commit the young person to the community, which even allows for more time. But these timeframes were carefully crafted with all the stakeholders engaged and present and voting for them. And it's really about bringing the kid back into court for those periodic reviews. And for felonies, we look at it very different. We're looking at 12 months, initially up to 24, and knowing that there may be continuing issues. We can go up to 36 months. That's 3 years.
Where is that?
We really want to make sure that we are monitoring this and really having some determinate timeframes to engage the young people, engage their families, and get some good results.
I'm going to jump in, Senator Kelsey. Just so we're going to take a break here because we have floor at 6:15. I want to give an opportunity for folks to eat before floor because it looks like it could be on for a decent amount of time tonight.
All right.
We will most assuredly vote tomorrow at 9 a.m. We don't have floor until I think noon tomorrow.
We have a bill hearing at 11:30.
And we have one bill hearing at 11:30. So we will vote tomorrow morning. Further instruction to come at the end of floor tonight. But let's go ahead and take a pause here, get something to eat before floor, and we'll be back. So, Ms. Talentino, if you might, I don't know what your schedule's like, but if you might be available for tomorrow morning, I'll be in touch with you if you could make yourself available. Really appreciate you joining us this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.